This is the first phone I ever bought in 2007, and how far mobile phones have come, and especially mobile phone gaming, is seriously mind-blowing. This phone is from before the iOS and Android takeover, before microtransactions. For any real gamers, the PSP and the DS were out for years already and giving us console quality graphics on the go. The Java games for the mobile felt, in a lot of ways, like those old Tiger Electronic games. A lot of the time, they were oversimplified, choppy, and still really cheap. I played a lot of them, but mostly because I was broke after buying this stupid phone. But seriously, Java was a big step up from the Nokia Snake games, and in an era when phones still had physical buttons, I was totally stoked by the variety of Java games out there. So just like with mobile gaming now, Java did have a lot of exclusive games and titles that you could only find on Java. But I think the main draw to playing some of these games now will be the fact that you can see how some of your favourite franchises and favourite characters actually held up on the mobile. So I wanted to start at the high points of my Java library. It's simple, but Worms works in this format. And if you're after a good Java experience, the classic Worms is basically just a direct port. And honestly, as far as ports go, it's one series that handles itself really well on Java, because it is slow and it's calculating. It was pretty common to see a classic game being ported across, but even worse, you could get Java versions of new releases at the time, like Crash Twinsanity. I am not even sure how they managed to playtest some of these games, because seriously, the keypad is a complete pain to use. And people complain about the Atari Jaguar controller. At least those buttons were bigger. If you have to experience something like this to feel complete in life, seriously dudes, just use an emulator. At least you can map out the keys. But it seriously takes away the one reason you might even consider playing Java games now, and that's being able to repurpose an old device. And Java certainly has some interesting games available on the platform, so why get caught up over the terrible platformers when you could be, I guess, playing a golf game? And seriously, golf games, man, they were like the staple of the casual gamer's diet. So in a way, they're set up to win on Java. And saying that, not something I'd ever buy for my PSP or my DS. Two games in particular that surprised me were, again, Worms Crazy Golf, but also Sonic Golf. As far as Sonic Golf goes, I guess Sega were willing to try anything after they exited the console wars, and they weren't really competing with Nintendo here. I guess that's still the case, but seriously, Sonic's environments and graphics make an awesome backdrop to the game of golf. And Crazy Golf is one of those concepts that could really work with any character, just as long as the golf is crazy enough. It doesn't have to play to Sonic's speed, but every 9 stages, you need to putt around Eggman. A few more interactive enemies and even some more item boxes, this game could have been the craziest golf game available on Java. Obviously, I am just one guy with homework and pets to feed and chores to do. But if you've got a favourite franchise, you might be totally blown away by the kind of variety you can find on this Java platform. Even the big guys like Call of Duty had a series of top-down style action shooters. Why would a game like Call of Duty need a Java title? It doesn't play like a Call of Duty game anyway, and it looks really generic. And neutered is a great way to explain some of these games. Made cheaper to be sold cheaper on hardware that very well may be out of date by next year. And considering how popular the iPhone is, that was totally the case with my phone. and mobile technology seems to move a lot quicker than consoles or handhelds. A great example is the Simpsons Minutes to Meltdown. It is a great looking, well produced Java game that had me hooked from beginning to end. As a game that pretty much exists just to promote the Simpsons movie and get you excited about Spider-Pig, it was a great 15 minutes. And yeah, that's the problem. It is super short. It's slick, and it's basically an advert. Something to push the Simpsons branding onto a device that you carry around. When you're diving into a Java game, it can be really hard to know what to expect. A great looking game might be super choppy. A popular franchise might be a total cash grab. And then there's games that blow my expectations for the Java platform right out of the water. There's proof out there that with some care, attention to detail, and even a little bit of dedication, you can have a really satisfying gaming experience. To get there, we need to go deep down the rabbit hole. Fun time is over. Dim the lights, get cozy, and try to keep a cool head as we check out some of the real survival horror in 240 by 320. Resident Evil Genesis is a great, obvious place to start. Right on our mobiles, we got the original Resident Evil storyline, totally adapted as a Java game. The umbrella threat is as real as ever, and to survive on a mobile, the biggest change, outside the isometric view, is the fighting system. You still need to be fast and accurate, and if an enemy closes the gap between you, it is really gonna hurt. But it was satisfying on mobile to walk into a room and just take out a bunch of shambling zombies. For fans of the original game, it feels like a really balanced compromise, especially when we look at what they did with Resident Evil Gaiden for the Game Boy. Walking into a room unprepared could easily be your last stupid decision. Considering this is just a Java game, I was pretty surprised to see the mansion had a totally different layout, all new puzzles, and some great references to the first game. Even though Chris has been cut all together. They even managed to include some of the fleshed out story elements from the GameCube remake, as well as 2 bosses and a hefty arsenal of weapons to put down any threat. The isometric view lends itself much better to a puzzle exploration type game, as you search the manor, unlock pieces to the umbrella puzzle, and slowly start to understand what's going down, providing you haven't already played the first one and you know the plot. I totally think fans of the original will find something to like here. Even though this game was released only 1 year before Resident Evil 5, it stays really close to its original source material, with heaps of backtracking, bizarre puzzles, and some really awesome boss fights. In saying that, the plot has been streamlined. The horror part in survival horror is lacking, and the controls took a bit of getting used to. So here's the big question. Instead of stooping to Java games, why wouldn't I just play Resident Evil Deadly Silence instead? Released 2 years earlier, Deadly Silence is essentially the first game ported right across to the DS. I actually found the fighting system easier to use in Genesis and more satisfying. The ability to save and load at any time made it easier to play on the go, and even though there's the lack of horror elements, I found myself getting sucked into the story of the game. They put everything into fleshing out an action-adventure title that's just fun to play on the small screen. Probably the best thing about playing a Java game, once the game is over or I quit, I've still got hundreds of other games on here. And when it comes to Resident Evil selection on Java, Capcom were not screwing around. Following up Genesis, they went bigger and better for Resident Evil Uprising, a game that, again, Capcom built from the ground up for mobile devices, and the Java formula is more potent than ever before. This is Resident Evil 2, perfectly distilled for the mobile phone. The fighting system has been fleshed out, and the zombies. They're less hopping after you and more like a shambling, legitimate threat. And as you make your way into the police station, there'll be plenty of reasons to keep on your toes. And yeah, those Resident Evil games, they went bigger and better in 3D, but I had a lot of difficulties running them off my phone. I guess personally, I prefer the simpler gameplay, and in all honesty, even though they do look great, I don't need my handhelds, especially ones that still run Java, to try and emulate console games. As impressive as they might look, simple graphics and simple concepts work best for me, and games like Genesis and Uprising were just more enjoyable on my little device. And man, I've come so far already. I'm already gonna have nightmares in portrait mode. I may as well talk about the Resident Evil games that didn't just rehash old plot lines. A stab at a turn-based Resident Evil game, moving one tiny square at a time. I'm glad they kept the room small because seriously, navigating does wear really thin, but I really like the concept behind it. Resident Evil has really built a great universe around the games. There are some great monsters and zombies, some really cool locations, and there is lots of lore around the Umbrella organization. I feel like the turn-based approach really gives you a chance to explore in this small format without needing to awkwardly swivel or frantically mash buttons to attack an incoming enemy. Again, there's lots of different enemy types, lots of different weapons, and you do get to uncover a lot of information as you continue your investigation. On the other side of the spectrum, Silent Hill took all the scares and the tension and moved it into a point-and-click adventure style game. Personally, I prefer the action approach with Resident Evil, but Silent Hill is a totally different approach to bringing you into a world designed for your tiny mobile screen, and it does really manage to hold on to those horror elements just a little bit better. And yeah, even though both Silent Hill and Resident Evil approach their material differently, I find both series really ambitious when you consider the Java platform. Then you've got Sega and their zombie game House of the Dead. Really surprising, really satisfying, no matter which version on which system. The first-person shooter genre has been attempted in Java before, and Doom is a great example of that, but instead of porting the arcade experience to mobile, Sega made an overhead run and gun game. Just like the arcade title, it does have a great atmosphere. It's super simple to play, and it's actually got some good pacing as you move through the environments, mowing down the undead, and probably, maybe just occasionally, saving a lab assistant. Like any good, really addictive mobile game, you can pick up power-ups, different weapons and money, all going towards your high score. But as a fan of the series, there was something so cool about seeing the franchise nearly rendered like a 16-bit game, and coming into House of the Dead, I wasn't expecting much to begin with. So I guess one of the big questions I had to ask myself when I was making this review was, how do Java games even compare with their modern counterparts on the smartphone? The truth is, I do not use my smartphone for gaming at all. With the lack of physical buttons and the obvious emphasis on free-to-play games with microtransactions, I've had a lot more fun playing Sonic Jump than Sonic Dash. Similar kind of move and jump mechanics, but when I die, I am not forced to watch an advertisement or purchase more lives. Sonic Dash does look amazing, but it's loaded down with prompts to spend money, and all those flashy graphics also mean it's going to suck up your battery life pretty fast. That's kind of why I enjoy playing my games on a dedicated device. And I'm sure there's a lot of people with phones just like this, taking up drawer space. There's a lot of Java titles out there. They were cheap to make, and apparently someone was making money with them. Because when it comes to some franchises, there's multiple Java games available. I'm not going to cover them all here now, but it is kind of amazing how far mobile phone gaming has really come, and in some ways, how similar the gameplay still is today. So, did I miss a few of your favourites? Or even your most despised Java games? Speak up and let me know in the comments. Who knows? There might even be a follow-up video. The best and worst of Java. Or an article for the website. Anyway, dudes, thank you guys so much for watching this video all about games on my mobile phone.